Qualifying session. So we're going to watch as we go around. We're going to go head over then onto the and to listen to the interview. So I hope you enjoy it, and let's get straight onto it. Good evening, everyone, and we are talking here today to Christian Moreau regarding the lovely IMSA multi-class event running at the Indianapolis GP circuit tonight. So we're going to start off with the interview questions here. So we're going to be first focusing on the three different classes. So mentioning that three different classes are going to be running around tonight around Indianapolis. Do you think there's going to be a concern regarding traffic?
Concerning traffic, this could be an interesting race. While the track offers many opportunities for prototypes to make their way through the GT traffic, what will be most interesting is how the GT2s interact with the GT3s. I don't believe we've ever run an event with these three classes together, therefore, it makes it difficult to gauge the performance gap between the GT2s and GT3s, especially into the braking zones and mid-corner. Making your way through traffic has always been a game of patience, and, when the time comes, split-second decisions. The drivers are certainly going to want to pay attention to their surroundings if they want to avoid any incidents.
So that's a very great way to put it there. And yeah, the difference between the GT2s and GT3s, I don't think I've actually seen an event run on a club event where they're both on the track together. So yes, you are right. It's going to be very interesting to see the difference between the two classes. The prototypes obviously going to be much faster. They're going to be flying around the track compared to the GTs, but that difference between those, that tiny little step between the GT3s, the GT2s, it's going to be interesting. But anyway, in yesterday's multi-class event, we saw a number of impatient prototype drivers, I must say, during the slower sections of the course. They were either flashing their lights or getting right up to the rear of the GT cars in front. Do you think that the drivers tonight will respect those in the other classes, or will you see some aggression during the passes made by the faster cars?
Historically, our multi-class races have been pretty good in terms of inter-class racecraft. Looking at today's driver lineup, I can see that the P2 class has some particularly fast drivers that will certainly want to minimize their time spent in traffic. I think we will see during the race today the difference between drivers that have experience managing traffic and those who might be lacking in that department. The most interesting section of the track will most likely be the first sector with the string of consecutive right-handers all taken at medium to high speeds. This is where we will most likely see the cornering performance difference between the three classes, and is where drivers of all classes will have to be particularly careful with the lines they take.
You are very right indeed, and with the different sort of classes that we've seen in previous multi-class events, definitely with the Race Department Le Mans series, we can say that sometimes inter-class battles, it's all about the driver behind. They've got to be the ones who've got to focus on getting past. But if you actually think about it, the GT cars, for example, in front, they're going to have to worry about going into their line. They can't just run their normal racing line if a prototype's up there inside. So yes, you're very right. It is going to be, we're definitely going to see the difference between those with experience and those that don't really know how to handle traffic of different classes. So you are very right. But anyway, moving on then to the next question. Indianapolis is the home of one of the most famous races in America, the Indy 500. So do you think that tonight this event will live up to the standards of such a prestigious event?
I sure hope so. This is no oval race, but with three distinct classes all offering different manufacturer brands with extremely close performance gaps, we could certainly see some close battles for class podium. It will be interesting to see the types of pit strategies that drivers decide to use, perhaps gaining them a few positions or gaining time that they had lost earlier in the race. By the end of the hour, hopefully things are close and we can have an Indy-style drag race to the finish.
I hope so too. I really hope that we can have that Indy-style drag race to the end. But yesterday's race, once again, I bring that up purely because once we had those pit stops, that mandatory stop that once again is featured in tonight's race, the battle started to split up a little bit. Hopefully, though, on a much shorter circuit than Spa, Indianapolis will hopefully we will retain those battles all the way to the end in the variety of classes, and hopefully we'll see some good racing throughout. But anyway, moving on to the next question, and this is a rather lengthy question on your behalf. So, what drivers do you think will be the ones to watch in each of the different classes?
Looking at the various classes, we certainly have some standouts for each. In P2, veteran drivers such as Reggie Blaine and Steve Ligalace could most likely possess an advantage with overall consistency and dealing with traffic. However, the class is still wide open with other skilled racers such as Tabitha, Matt Ligalace, Peter Backus and Joel Johnson possessing excellent pace in any class where which they participate. Certainly a good group of drivers to look out for.
You are certainly right there. They are an extremely good...
In GT2 we find...
Sorry about interrupting you there. It certainly does seem like, yes, you are right though when you say that Steve Legale, Reggie Blaine, Matt Legale, all of them that you mentioned there, they do definitely show extremely good pace and extremely good racecraft in all the different classes that they do race in. So you are right, it's going to be quite interesting here to see what the... how close it's going to be. Definitely only 12 drivers I think it is per class, and you've just mentioned most of them there, so it's going to be interesting to see where people do come out. Sorry about interrupting you, bro. Please continue.
In GT2 we find a few staff members with Daniel Trapp and Lorenzo Bonda joining the fray. Perhaps we will see some competitive spirit between the two during the race. Other favourites for the class include Piero Favoriti and Anthony Raffaele, who possess great consistency and overall pace. The rest of the class could certainly be wide open, and most interestingly, will be the choice of car being made here, seeing as I expect the Corvette to have an advantage here with the additional torque it possesses to help it exit out of corners. Perhaps the M3 will be able to counter with its superior cornering ability. We'll find out soon enough.
And you are right to mention both of those staff members taking part in the race tonight, Daniel Trapp and Lorenzo Bonda. And it's going to be interesting to see them both out on track. I mean, I've seen Daniel out on track a number of times. I've seen Lorenzo out on track in the RDLMS series, which again is a multi-class series. It's going to be interesting to see them. They're both in the GT2 cars. Hopefully they'll have a little bit of a scrap and battle it out. And it's going to be interesting, but you definitely do point out the favourites of Piero Favoriti and Anthony Raffaele. They're also going to be up there, and the Corvette, you're right, it's going to be really helpful with the extra torque it has, exiting out of corners, definitely onto the main straightaway, obviously along the oval section of the circuit. It's going to be really important to have that torque. But please go on to the GT3s then. Talk about GT3, the last class out of the three that we're racing tonight.
GT3 also possesses some names that could be putting down some very good lap times. Long-time club members such as Malachi Bakers and Steve Kenwood consistently show great pace capable of giving them chances at a podium. One of our Australian members, Sean Jacobs, is taking part and is certainly another favourite for the upper tier of the class. With its many brands and excellent bop, it will be interesting to see how the various GT3 cars use their respective advantages to make their lap times around the track.
You are right, it's going to be interesting to see Sean Jacobs racing at midnight, about the middle of the night for him. Bearing in mind he is obviously one of our Australian members. It's extremely late in the night for him. But you're also mentioning about Malachi Backus, Steve Kenwood. I've seen them both race, they're both extremely strong, and it's going to be interesting. They're both in the slowest cars. Well, technically the slowest cars out of all the classes, but they're certainly not the slowest drivers. Just because they're going to be in the slowest cars doesn't mean that by any means whatsoever. It's going to be interesting to see them battling for the podium positions, for the race wins in their class, and it's going to be an absolute amazing battle. Sean Jacobs, another one. Even though he is going to be racing in the middle of the night, it's going to be interesting to see how that sort of affects him in his race strategy. But finally, we're going to move on to our last question. So what would be the section around this Indianapolis Grand Prix circuit that you feel that would be the best opportunities for drivers to make their move?
Certainly the long start-finish straight quarter oval will be a great opportunity for P2S and GT2S to use their superior straight line speed to make up time. The end of the back straight will also be another great position for making moves on traffic, with a very big braking zone positioned at the end of it. It remains to be seen if drivers will be brave enough to attempt anything in the first sector. With the tight and twisty nature of that portion of the track, drivers will have to be very careful so as to avoid incidents. Important to remember that the track is quite flat, lacking any significant banking in any of the corners, minus the oval sections. Such a flat surface will allow the classes to the maximum levels of downforce that their cars are able to create.
You have been an absolute pleasure to have here tonight, Christian. Thank you very much for joining us. I know you're extremely busy and you can't get behind the wheel yourself. It's very unfortunate that you can't join us behind the wheel. It would be nice for you to fill that final GT3 stop perhaps. But anyway, it's been nice having you in at the broadcast booth tonight. It's been nice interviewing you about the different events, and we hope to see you back behind the wheel soon. Thank you very much for joining us here today, and we will catch you another time.